My name is Laura Lee Cole, and I'm the Customer Marketing Manager here at Restaurant365. We are thrilled you are here today. We're going to talk about how to streamline orders, control costs, and maximize your Restaurant365 investment. Today's coach is David Mortensen, our Customer Success Manager here at Restaurant365. Fantastic. So let's set the stage. We all know that purchasing can be one of the trickiest parts of running a restaurant between managing suppliers, keeping costs under control, and ensuring consistency. It can feel overwhelming. That's exactly why we're here today, to show how Restaurant 365 can simplify that process and give you more visibility, more control, and especially more profitability. So to lead us through, I'm excited to introduce today's coach, David Mortensen. He is a customer success manager here at Restaurant 365, as I mentioned, based in Austin, Texas. Before joining us, David spent over a decade in the back of house as a chef and kitchen leader, and he also managed front of house operations. He actually started with us as an implementation coach, helping customers get a strong start with Restaurant 365. And today, he partners with operators nationwide to sharpen both financial and operational practices. So simply put, David knows restaurants inside and out, and he's passionate about helping you succeed. So David, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura Lee. Yeah, guys, really excited to come before you and to do this webinar. Something that kind of hits home to me, which is, getting your order guide set up and really just managing from that little bottom level, right? How much management can we actually do just from the ordering process? Well, there's quite a bit that we can get out of it. And so today's webinar is going to get you guys in that, talking about it and, doing it. And we're also going to use pieces from Restaurant 365 to help us drive these results and help us drive the things that we're going to try and go in and set up. But before we get started, I do have a poll that we wanted to throw together. All right, what's your biggest challenge with purchasing today, right? Is it controlling the cost and overordering, substitutions, PO to invoice discrepancies and how to reconcile those, lack of visibility, meaning that you don't have any reporting and don't know what reporting to run, or maybe it's training our managers on this process. And while that gets answered, yeah, I'm going to try and speak to a little bit of everybody today, your CEOs and your CFOs at the top, all the way down to your restaurant managers and how we can put all this together and how we can benefit from it. Looks like we still have a few coming through, so lots of great participation. Love seeing that. 100% answered. Just give it just a couple more moments. All right, let's share those results. Okay, so yeah, it looks like a little bit of an issue as far as sharing that goes, but it looks like vendor substitutions and price changing was the overall arching issue, right? And then the second is going to be our controlling our cost and over ordering, both of which I hope to address today on our inside the webinar. So without further ado, let's just hop right in and let's get started. Now, when it comes to ordering, right, I've always imagined well, not imagine, but me being in the back of house, I've kind of felt like the guy in the picture here, right? Without any automation set up, without any integrations or anything to kind of make these things a little bit more automated for me, it was always up to me, the restaurant manager, to have to hand put in my invoices so it matches up on the P&L and we can get my items, categorized and taken care of as far as my inventory program goes. But then again, we're populating the P&L, so I have to get in touch with my, accountants and make sure that everything's lined up correctly on all of these invoices. And well, I mean, I can just imagine, what it'd be like today without these automations in place that, hey, we got, papers that are piling up behind us. My hair's on fire. I've got, servers asking me to go out and deal with the lady that we spilt the marinara sauce and the white dress on, right? We've got all these things that are happening. And one of the things that we don't really need to worry about is all of these back end things, especially things that we can automate, right? And, by going in and having to key these things in manually, whether it's your AP or your orders or whatever it is, right? There's a lot of things that we lose in the process, one of which being time. It's incredibly time consuming to have to sit back behind a computer and enter in this stuff. Because it's spending more time, that drives up your labor costs. Because if managers don't have the time to do it, then we're paying those hourly employees to take up the mundane work, right? And that drives up our labor costs, right? And then lastly, if we're doing this pen and paper style stuff and we're just hand entering it into computers, that's going to create inefficiencies because, well, people make mistakes all the time, some more than others, right? Some people just don't get technology. So therefore, this can be a very challenging piece. So there's a lot that goes into this. And what I'm going to talk about today is how we can streamline and automate the ordering process, whether you're the CEO or CFO at the very top or all the way down to the restaurant manager. How can we streamline this process? How can we set this up? And then furthermore, how can we follow up with our vendors? And how can we make a better lasting relationship with our vendors to make some of these things happen a little less frequently, or again, know where to follow up and do these things? So a couple of things that we're going to cover, right? We'll cover the integrations. We're going to talk about how to streamline this process over multiple locations. And then also, a couple more automations that we have available post ordering and post invoicing process that we have. But moving right on out, right? I want to talk about purchasing power. What even is purchasing power and how can we utilizing it? Well, you, the consumer, because you are the customer to the vendor, right? We are consuming the product. So therefore, we as operators are now the consumers to the vendors. We hold all the power, right? We're the ones that's purchasing. The distribution centers that Cisco and US Foods and all these other vendors utilize are no different than our restaurants, right? They fill up the shelves and then they have to get rid of the stuff that's on the shelves, right? We have to deplete these things as we go along. And if it just sits on our shelves, well, that's money and that space that's being wasted. That's money that we've already spent that we haven't made any profits on. And so the vendor very much wants to move their product just as much as you want to move your product. But what I'm getting at is you are the people that are spending these millions and millions of dollars with these broadline vendors. So therefore, at the end of the day, you have this purchasing power. You have the ability to go up to the vendor and say, I don't really like that. We need to switch it to this. Or, hey, we need to streamline this. We need to make it consistent across all locations. So, it only benefits you to go in and make these relationships with the vendors and then realize the power that you actually hold as the consumer, right? We hold a lot more than we think that we do. Sure, they can control some things, but we can also control and fight back. And I hope that we get some things out of today that you can utilize that to your vendors. So who benefits from this? Who benefits from having this purchasing power? Well, first off, your C-suites, your people at the top, your owners, your CEOs, your CFOs, your accountants, right? They're going to benefit from this because we're going to streamline the order process. We're going to mitigate substitutions, or at least understand what the substitutions are and how they impact the bottom line. And we can also make consistency across all of our multiple locations if we're trying to scale this. But this also benefits all the way down to the restaurant manager, because as a restaurant manager, hey, that's less crap for you to think about, right? Just because we got a new SKU in doesn't mean I'm going to start ordering that new item. So we can streamline that process as the manager, spend less time behind the computer. So you're spending more time in front of guests with your servers, with your cooks, right? Portioning control and all those other good things. So how do we get this power by using Restaurant365? Well, I'm going to give you pretty close to a step-by-step on, hey, one of the things that I use on my calls with my customers quite often is, hey, David, you're in charge. How would you go do this? And so this is exactly how I would go and do it. And this is proven effective in the field because all the screenshots and everything that I'm going to give to you today are from live uses inside of Restaurant365. These are customers that actually went through this process and set it up in this manner, and they're only reaping the benefits as it comes to now. So the first thing that we need to get in line is going to be our order guide, right? We need to get our order guide set up. We need to know what SKUs that we're going to use and how we're going to determine that. We need to know how the integration is set up so we can make that automated for us so we don't have to think about it, right? And make it a little bit more automated for both the accountant and the operator. And then lastly, let's lock those orders down. So therefore, managers can't override that. They can't choose which items they think. It's going to be up to you at the top. Or again, if you're a restaurant manager trying to set this up to get ahead of the game, it's going to be a good idea to lock this down so your other managers can't order outside of it. So how can we get started on this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up what an actual order guide, what it looks like to set it up. There's an actual live order guide in the database, and we're going to talk about some of these systems and the whys behind it, because we're going to, again, hopefully do a step-by-step process for this. So the first thing, whenever you go to create a new order, guys, we're going to set up the top section, which is just general information. Not a lot to that, right? It's the name of the template, it's the vendor, and it's the location. Pretty simple. The next piece is going to be the repeat on days. Now, what this is doing is this is setting up for me to be able to understand when my orders are due. So if we wanted to set up automations to where purchased orders are just going to be ready to go whenever the managers wake up in the morning, we're going to utilize this repeat on days, but we're also going to utilize this for a very powerful button that I'm going to talk about a little later on. I call it the beach order button. More on that in a little while. But this is going to set yourself up to be able to use the database to automate your ordering according to your forecasted sales and your actual usage over time. So we'll get to that in a minute, but first I kind of want to break down what it is. And what we're doing is you're deciding what days we're going to order and then what days we're going to consume that truck once it arrives. So if we look at how this restaurant opened it up, right, they said they're going to order on Mondays, they're going to receive their truck on Tuesdays, and they're going to consume that truck on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if you look over on the far right, we have a buffer day. Because we all get it in the restaurant industry. Sometimes we won't get that truck until 4 o'clock in the afternoon when we're used to getting it at 10 a.m. Right? It happens. So we need to make sure that we have enough product to at least be able to float us through a shift, maybe even a whole day. So we're going to leave a buffer day in there. And what that's going to do is that's going to add in an extra day in with those forecasting amounts so the database knows, hey, we need to factor in one additional day so we can get through that day. Simple. Right? And then the next part, now we're going to go from the second column into this third column over here. And then this is where we're going to add in the different items that we're going to put inside of our order guide, AKA our SKUs, right? The vendor items, as we call it in Restaurant 365. This is where you're going to program it and say, we're going to order this item, right? So super easy to go in and do to just fill that in. One of the things that I find that's really effective as far as adding in multiple SKUs. And so rather than adding in one item at a time, you can come over here to this far right area where it says add items. And there's a drop down in there where it's going to allow you to add all of your produce or all of your beef items or whatever that looks like for you, right? But you can add all of those in. You can even add in all of the vendor item records that you have for a single vendor and then just go in and pick and choose which ones you want to utilize from there. So that could be a quick, easy way to quickly make your guide, but you're going to want to make sure that you're putting the correct SKUs in there as far as what it is that you want to utilize for your business. And this can range from multiple locations, right? If we have multiple locations and we want to make sure that the fruit that we're putting out or the milks that we're putting out or whatever the items are consistent across the board, right? How they are in this region, they should be the exact same item in another region. Another thing that we're going to look at is cost, right? What is the cost for that item? But also, what is the effectiveness of that item, right? Is it a good item? Is it maybe more watery or maybe thicker or, right? What's the consistency of it? How is it performing in the field? And then you could also utilize other things like your comps and your discounts to really see how an item performed. So, I want to break that down, right? Because I want to be able to utilize the system that we have. Maybe we haven't had these processes and we're trying to put them into place. So we need to go in to decide which SKUs do I want to use. And so I have a specific report that I like to run. It's called the receiving by purchased item. But before we run it, I've kind of got a gotcha. And what I mean by a gotcha is there's a little bit of setup that needs to go into this report to get maximum value out of it. So I want to talk about that. Then we're going to run the report and we're going to talk about how we can then use that to flood our order guides with the correct SKUs that we want moving forward. So as far as the parameters go, again, the report is called receiving by purchased item. So you're going to go in and run that report. But the three main things that I recommend to run are these three pieces because it's going to make or break what the overall report's going to look like whenever we go in and run it. And really, there's two columns that I want to look at whenever we run this report, and I'll show you the whys whenever we get on there. But first, let's talk about what those setups are, and then we'll hop on the report and we'll see what that is. So first is going to be the detail, right? Detail level, so we have a summary level, and then we have details. I want all the nitty-gritty details, right? I want to know the unit of measure. I want to know the transaction. It even gives you a link to that transaction. I want to know what vendor I got it from. If I'm the CEO or the CFO or the CPA that's running for the organization and I'm following up on this stuff, I want to know what general ledgers use, right? So we don't get any of that level of detail on summary. So we're going to want to hit details on that. Moving on down, the expand all. me personally, I hate digging in, right? I hate going in and saying, all right, let's open up beverages, let's open up milks, and then here's all my milks. Just break open the report. Let me go through my 2 columns on every single item because we can find those consistencies or inconsistencies very quickly. So therefore, I'm going to say expand that bad boy out. Just makes more sense for me. That's optional for you, but I would encourage it. And then lastly, we want to make the units of measure inside of this report consistent. We've been talking about automation up to this point and how it's going to make your lives better, whether you're the CEO, CFO, manager, or whatever. So we want to continue doing that. We want to let the database do the work for us. And so what this is going to do is this is going to make the unit of measure your inventoried unit of measure, right? Also known as a U of M1 inside of the item record. The other option is transactional, meaning it's going to look at that transaction and see, okay, you bought quarts instead of pints this time, so it's going to tell you how much a pint costs. And then the next column is going to tell you how much the quart costs because that's how you bought it. That's not what we want out of this report. We want the units of measure to be clean and consistent, the same all the way down, because the database is going to do the math. Hey, if you paid this much for a quart, this is how much it costs in the gallon. It's going to automatically do that math for you. So let the database do a little bit of that automation, and this is one of those places. So again, quickly, right, we want the details, we want to expand everything out, and then we want our units of measure to be consistent, and this is how we get to do so. So now that we go in and we actually run the report, let's kind of break down what we're looking at, just so we can all be on the same page with, breaking down this report. We've got the item. Right now, we're just looking at almond milk. Okay, we're not looking at anything else, just the almond milk, and this is where that the breakout comes in. So I don't have to dig into beverages, drinks, and then my none. It's all broken out. And then we've got the level of detail that I was talking about as far as the details that we get out of it, right? What location ordered it. I grayed out to protect the names of the innocent for this. We got transaction number, which this is all linkable, right? Meaning I can click on that and it'll actually take me to that transaction from this report. We can see the GL account. We can see what vendor we ordered from. We can see the SKUs that we ordered. More on that in a second. We can see transaction date. Here's where the unit of measure. See how everything is nice, clean, and consistent. We're just looking at that 32-ounce bottle, but the full case amount. And these are the costings for it, regardless if I purchased it by the pint or by the gallon or whatever it was. This is going to automatically do that translation so we can keep the cost consistent. And then we have the invoice information. How much did we order and how much did that cost us? And then the total amount. Now, as far as the things that I'm looking at whenever we're going through and doing this exercise, well, I've gone in and I've highlighted a few of the things that we're looking at. And basically, I'm just looking at 2 columns whenever I'm going through this report. Again, I'm using this to initially set up SKUs, but you could also use this to follow up on substitutions and what their impact was, whether it was an increase or decrease in cost. And was it a substitution or was it because we ordered from a different vendor, or what does that look like, right? All the answers can be pretty much summed up by looking at the vendor item SKU, and the amount. And so all I'm really doing is I'm going down and I'm seeing, okay, $23.99 is pretty consistent across the board, but we have these others that stick out. And whenever I look at these, you can see that we've got, again, nice, clean, consistent item SKU, but then the SKU changes, as does the cost. So now, just because I'm ordering different SKUs from what looks like different markets, right, I am now eating that cost because we're going from $23.99 to $28.24, $33.56, or even more mind-blowing in the West Coast market. Those guys are getting a completely different SKU that's almost double the amount of what everyone else is paying. That's huge to me. So this is the kind of purchasing power that I was talking about, and how you can use 365 to not only help you figure out which SKUs do I want to use. Clearly on this one, I want to use SKU number 719-1833. It's what most of my markets are ordering. It's the cheapest of the option. And, again, you could do the research and find out, what do your managers think about that versus the substitutions. But very quickly, I can see that we're being ripped off just because we're in different markets. So this is where that purchasing power comes into play. Hey, Cisco, slap this report on their desk and say, look at what I'm seeing. I'm seeing huge inconsistencies. I need consistent across the board. So everybody that's doing almond milk inside of any of my locations are using the same product across the board, and we're not getting these aha moments or these gotcha moments. Substitutions I get, and again, we can use this report to find substitutions very easily, but this can, again, show you what that impact is. So as far as building my report, right, I'm going to use this to see what SKUs have I been using, which ones are the most consistent across the board. I'm going to reach out to my managers and ask them about those items. Is this the one that we want to use moving forward? And then bam, I have now gone in and created my order guides, but beyond that, very powerful report to go in to be able to, again, call out substitutions, see what that impact is to your cost of goods, or, how much money we're being ripped off from there. And I've got another report that's going to play into this that we're going to go over a little bit later. But again, just a really powerful report to help you build this order guide and to help you moving forward as far as following up with your vendor. Right? So now that we have the order guide, right, we've got the general information, we've got our consumption days, and now we've got all of our SKUs on there. The next thing that you guys are going to want to do is you're going to want to lock the invoices down, or more in particularly, we want to order or lock the templates down and then force our managers to use those templates. Now, what's this going to do? Well, this is going to do a couple of things. For one, it's going to create less work on the manager so they don't have to guess which item that they're going to order. Secondly, it gives you, right, the CEOs, CFOs at the top, it gives you that, the knowledge that, hey, I've gone in, I've vetted all of these items. I have now locked them down inside of my order templates, and now the managers have to order these. And as you can see, right, I've given you a little bit of a tip. If you use Control F whenever you're in our security and permissions to search for these things, I find that to be very less time consuming as far as digging through this, because we have a lot of options when it comes to our security clearances that we need to get to it quickly. So therefore, using that Control F really does come in handy to find these. And that's what allowed me to find these lockdowns on how I'm going to lock these down. And as far as what I recommend to do, right, I'm going to lock down the ability to edit my templates, to create my templates, or to delete those. I'm going to allow them to view them, but I'm not going to allow them to edit those. And then lastly, I'm going to require a template when creating purchase orders. So that way the managers have to use a template in order to do an order. They can't go rogue and use their own or anything that they've created in the past or whatever that looks like. But now you're going to force them to use a template, and you've already locked those down to where they can't create them, they can't edit them. So this is how you take control. This is how you make it consistent across all of your locations if you have multiple locations, because I am able to copy an order guide and shoot that to all of my locations if I want to go in and do that. And again, this is what makes it scalable. And this is what makes it usable by all of your different restaurants at the store level, your area directors to follow up on, all the way up to you, the CEO, CFO, to, again, be able to utilize 365 to help you build these things, but also then lock them down, right? So that way we have that peace of mind moving forward on, well, I don't have to worry about them ordering that really expensive SKU from, from South Florida like we saw a minute ago, okay? So now that we have the order guide built, we've locked it down. The next thing that I want to talk about is integrating this stuff, right? Because right now we've only talked about just creating the order guides. Now I want to talk about the electronic communication between me, aka 365, and the vendor, right? So it's a pretty simple process. Really, all you need to do is put in a support ticket. It's that simple, right? If we have a list in our support site that says all of the different vendors that we integrate with, it tells us whether, we can do the purchased orders or not. It's all on one page. So if we already integrate with them, great, no problem. Put in a support ticket. Now, most of our contracts, whenever you originally sign, come with, generally, it's around 3 automatic free integrations. But if you wanted to add more, you could absolutely add more to that integration list. Just reach out to your CSM and we can get you set up with that. So we can have as many vendors as you want set up electronically to receive those invoices, right? And again, all we need to do is just put it in a support ticket and say, hey, we want to start receiving invoices. Most likely your CSM and your AE are going to take over from there and, let you know, hey, you've got 2 left, or hey, we need to go ahead and add this to your integration list, and then send you out an invoice to sign and then get that rolling. So that's it for to get the invoices integrated. And the whole purpose behind that is so your managers aren't hand entering in, the 10 pounds of beef, the 5 gallons of mayonnaise, and all these other pieces that they're getting. The vendor's going to send that over, right? Your managers aren't even going to touch it. Your managers are just going to order it and send that in. We'll talk about that integration, but right now we're just talking about the receiving of the invoices. So by receiving the invoices and having Restaurant 365's automation set up, you can now automate your AP to where, hey man, it's coming in, you're summarizing it by item, and you've got all of your items set up to utilize this different SKU or whatever it is, right? That is utilizing this general ledger. It's all set up for automation. As far as that automations is concerned, my tip and trick for that would be to look at your invoices religiously for about a month or two, every single line item that's on that invoice, just to make sure that everything's lining up, right? Units of measure to quantities. Am I paying this amount for this unit of measure? If the answer is yes, you're good. If the answer is no, you need to change your units of measure, right? I think I have it in here as a tip, right, on my next slide, that 98% of all costing errors are due to incorrect units of measure on the invoices. So you got to nail your invoices, or otherwise you're going to have a bad time whenever it comes to doing your inventory and the costings and whatnot. So make sure that you're following up on your invoices. Make sure that we correct the mistakes, so therefore moving forward, they're more automated. And hey, man, if you're running through and you're approving invoices and we're not having to correct any of those mistakes, and whenever we get around to inventory, all of my costing is perfect, then I would say you're more of an automation to just approve those, right? Because we've already vetted out the information previously. So you may get to a point to where you don't even have to look at the invoices as they come in. I, as an operator, don't recommend that. You should at least look through them just to make sure everything's lining up. But again, once you get further down the process, you're going to see that that's going to be less and less of a lift moving forward. Okay. So that's how we get integrated with the invoices coming in, but we also integrate with the purchase orders going out. So there's two different sides of this coin. Either we are going to integrate with the vendor and we're going to physically take the order that you take in 365 and we're going to push it to their online portal. Now there's a list of about 10, I think 15, somewhere in there, of vendors that we do this with. All the big boys on the block, right? Your Cisco's, your US Foods are going to be up there to where we can, again, integrate our purchase order module with their online portals. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the purchase order, and again, whatever it is that you submit in 365, it's going to send it to that online portal, and then your management team is then going to manage it from there. Easy, right? And on the order guide, if you see this little plug icon without a slash through it, that means that we're integrated in with that purchase order, meaning that it's going to go to the online portal. If this is grayed out and it has a little slash through it, the order is still going to go out. However, it's going to go out to an email address that you can specify per location, or you can have your manager fill it in per purchase order, whichever you want to do. But it's going to send a PDF or CSV format to that email, whether that's the rep or whoever, and then we can get the order sent out that way. Obviously, the online ordering is going to be the most efficient and the least like for mistakes, but at least this way, if we're sending it out to the sales rep, we can point the finger at them and say, you did it wrong because I sent it to you correctly, and you can follow up on all of those. Right? So again, going in and setting up your purchase orders, making sure that they're all integrated and ready to go. But now that we have my order guide set up and ready to go, we now know that we're integrated to receive the invoice and to push the purchase order. Now I want to talk about some of the goodies that we have inside of the actually ordering, the ordering process that could be very beneficial. I mentioned it earlier, but right, that beach order. So I want to talk about that. Now, what I mean whenever I say beach order is I'm on the beach, right? I forgot to do my Cisco order. Crap, what do I do? Obviously, I'm not at the restaurant to be able to go in and say we've got 4 things of beef in there, so I need to order 4 more to get it through the week. We have this very powerful button called the suggest quantity inside of our orders that you can utilize to your advantage. However, there's a bit of setup, and I like to know where these numbers are coming from to make sure that they're accurate. And to make sure that you guys know where it's coming from, because if it's giving you funky numbers, it's probably because your setup somewhere went wrong. So let's talk about how this utilizes. So what it does is it uses your inventory and your purchasing data to then come up with an amount of your usage, right? It's the cost of goods equation, beginning balance plus purchases minus ending balance. Since 365 holds all that information because you're taking inventory in the database, you're receiving all of your invoices in the database via automations, we're automatically getting all that stuff. So the database knows exactly how much of each product that you're using according to the sales that you did for that week. And so what it does is it takes that information and we shrink it down to a more bite-sizable chunk, right? We did $40,000 in the week, but that's too much, right? Because now if I'm going to go in and see how much almond milk that I need to use, scaling that up to 40 grand, then it could be a little troublesome. So what we do is we shrink it down. We call it usage per $1,000. So how much of that product did we use in the to make $40,000 of revenue? And we shrink it down to $1,000 usage. And then what that does is that now says, okay, for every $1,000 or for every $1,000 that you're going to forecast in with 365, it now can multiply that by, we're doing $34,000. Now we're going to multiply that number by 34. And this is how much of that product that you need. The things that can go wrong with this is if our invoicing is incorrect or if our inventories are incorrect. Because if we're telling the database, this is how much of this product that we're using, and we're, let's say, growing that product, that's going to be a problem whenever we go to order it, because the database is going to assume that you're growing it on your roof, or you're somehow growing this product because we're not properly putting in invoicing, or we're counting incorrectly, or whatever that might be. So in order to use that button, guys, you got to be 100% on your inventories, and we got to be 100% on our invoicing. As long as that's done, then this can be a very powerful button to, again, oh crap, I'm on the beach, I didn't do my order. We can get pretty doggone close to what we think is what's going to happen. And that's even with things like, hey, we've got the big catering coming up, because you can put that into your forecast that we're going to do $2,000 more because of the catering, right? And then you could put internal notes, let everyone know we've got the $2,000 catering so we can stock up on the lasagna sheets because it's all lasagnas, right? So again, utilizing the tools that you have to automate this process can be time saving. But again, you got to make sure that everything is done in the background, or otherwise you're not going to have a very good time utilizing this stuff, right? And so another tip and trick, right? This is for my CFOs and my CEOs and my, accountants that are on the call. I also recommend, as kind of a tip and a trick, to align your item categories with your general ledgers. If you've ever heard any of my webinars or any of my presentations at RTTs, this is something that I push on almost all of them. I find a way to get it in there because I think this is so important, because if we're trying to do things like match a P&L to the transactions that my managers are putting in, I need that stuff to be penny to penny. Otherwise, the managers aren't going to trust those numbers. This is how we get there, right? Whatever they're calling dairy in with their items, you need to be calling dairy in with your general ledgers. Or actually, we need to flip that script, because we are general ledger driven in 365. Items are just, right, reflecting off of that general ledger. So as long as you are connecting your categories with your general ledgers, then that's going to make reporting, especially on the general ledger level, a lot easier to read for your managers. And not only that, it's also going to match up to these reports, because whenever they go down to the bottom of their order and they see, all right, I'm spending $60 in cleaning supplies, $120 in restaurant supplies, $58 in drinks, right on down the way, that's essentially what's going to hit the P&L whenever it gets sent in, as long as the vendor does their part. And we'll go over how to reconcile that and make sure that the vendor is doing their part. But it's all going to match up. And the way that I recommend to match it up is we've got category one. This is going to be high level, meaning we're not trying to match up general ledgers, although I do see beverage as that general ledger that sometimes is mapped up from category ones. But we're not using category one to map up anything, because that's very high level. Either it's a food item, it's not a food item, or it's a beverage item. That's it, right? You may be able to throw it in for like cleaning supplies, up to you on how you want to do that. But again, these are kind of your big three. And then from there, we're going to break out my category ones into a category two, to then break it down more. But this is where the general ledgers need to meet, right? If you are breaking out your cost of goods in this kind of manner, then you should have your categories in the exact same format. So therefore, we're all speaking the same language. And so whenever we dig into beverage on the P&L, we're also digging into what's liquor, what's beer, what's in a bev, right on down the line, right? Again, we're all speaking the same language. I can't stress this enough, because this is generally where I see the biggest breakdown between what my accountants are showing the managers and what the managers are doing as far as the research to find out where their numbers went wrong, right? So can't stress this enough. Okay, so controlling the substitutions, right? This is a big part as well, because yes, we can control the orders, we can control what it is that our managers are ordering, but I can't really control the vendor sending out these substitutions. So this is a real big part that I want to talk about, because substitutions can be bad or negative because of quality that your guests are expecting, right? They've been expecting this almond milk, but this other almond milk that we have is a little bit more watery. Maybe it has a heavier almond flavor than the other ones. So you're going to have that inconsistency. But not only that, it can also be more expensive or less expensive and not as good a quality, right? So at the end of the day, we need to learn how to communicate with our vendor. We need to be able to help control these substitutions. And what can we use to help utilize that, well, those things. Before we hop into the reports that we can talk about, I've got another poll that we're going to now hop in and hit. Get that poll loaded up. Give me a chance for a water break. All right, so suggested ordering, right? So how confident are you in the accuracy of your order quantities? Are we extremely confident, meaning that we're using these stuff that, and David, this is just review of what you're going over and just, hey man, we've been doing this for a while. Are you somewhat confident, but we're still kind of guessing? Not confident at all, meaning that, hey, we're still just very manual in this process? Or, you know what, man? I'm not sure. We haven't used any of these things that you're talking about, and we're just, we're scratching the surface, and we're really hoping that you, David, can teach us how to go in and use this and tell us what reports we can do to follow this up. We'll give a couple more moments. I love the participation. You guys are killing it. All right, so let's share those results. Cool. So yeah, looking at this, looks like, right, we got some confident levels, and then you can just see the confident level just slowly kind of trickle down from there. So yeah, sounds like we've got some things in place. Sounds like a lot of us don't. So hopefully we can start to utilize everything that we're learning today to your advantage to, again, make this a little bit more powerful. So thanks for participating in the poll. Let's move on to some of these purchasing reports on the ones that I find that are ran in the field are the most valuable, how we can utilize this to your advantage. And then not only that, but how can we utilize this for more purchasing power to the vendor, right? Because that's what we're talking about a lot today. All right. So let's talk about the first one is my purchase order to invoice. Now, if I'm using purchase orders in 365 and we're getting those invoices in automatically, this is now where I can go in and I can say, okay, what happened on the invoice? Now, whenever you match the purchase order to the invoice, there's a manual process for that, but we also have automations in place. So if your purchase orders aren't automatically matching up to your integrated invoices, there's a setting that you're missing. Put in a support ticket and let them go in, make sure that your settings are good, or otherwise we may need to tighten it up as far as when the invoices are sent versus when the orders come in. But there's automation put in place where this can happen, where these things can link automatically. Now, whenever they do, and you pull up the invoice and it is linked, there's a little alert down at the bottom of the invoice that's going to tell you exactly what's different versus what was ordered versus what was physically sent. But, like you're the CEO or CFO at the very top, and we don't have time to go in and look at all 400 invoices over the past quarter. So therefore, I just want one report that'll rule them all. And this PO to invoice reconciliation report can do exactly that, right? It can tell me if there's a quantity difference. It'll tell me what was ordered versus what was received. So if they did short me that trash can, hey, I'm going to know about it. Or if they're consistently shorting my straws, like I didn't even get my straws on this truck, stuff that I need to know about, right? So I can ask the manager, hey, what'd you do for straws? And then I can go up to, the vendor and say, hey, we're running out of straws. What do we need to do to stop that from happening? What do you need to stock? Do we need to order another product? Again, having those conversations with your vendor. And then we can also see price variances as well. Right. So if they're raising or lowering prices, I'm going to see that. And then I'm going to see what the impact is. For instance, right, this item, we ordered it at $23.49, but it came in at $28. That's a $5.50 difference. Right. We want to know about those kinds of things so we can see the impact on our cost of goods, see the impact on the item just because they changed what it was that I had ordered. So we can see that discrepancy right then and there, which, again, very nice report that we can go in and run. The next one is going to be contract violation. So one of the purchasing powers that you can approach your vendor with and say, hey guys, we're ordering this item. In this case, it's this white coconut item. We order this item on every single invoice, right? For every single location. We're very consistent across the way. And I want to lock this down, right? Maybe we can do a 6-month contract, a year contract, but I don't want to be surprised. And with this item, we're spending enough money with you that we shouldn't see a price increase on this. What can we do as a partnership to come up with a contract pricing that I can rely on? And then what you can do is you can program that contract price into 365, and then I can either see it whenever it's been violated on the invoice whenever it comes in that same alert section, or I can just simply run this report and see every time that the item was violated under the contract rules that we have specified. And then it's extremely easy for me to now print this out, go slap this down on Cisco's desk and say, this is why I'm going to go shop at US Foods unless we can fix this, right? So again, you, the consumer, has that power of just saying, you know what, we'll just go somewhere else and this is why. So I think that one of those conversations to have with your vendors is to set up contract pricing, and this is your way that you can follow up on it. Now, one thing that I didn't mention with any of these reports is you can also set these up on a subscription. So these reports can just hit your inbox automatically, which I would recommend to do, just so you don't have to hop in the database and run these. You can just have them, again, show up in your inbox at any given time, at any given cadence that you want to utilize. Very nice. Last report that I'm going to talk about is going to be the item price change analysis. Now, for me, the item price change analysis kind of coincides with the receiving by purchased item, because receiving by purchased item is going to tell me, okay, we've increased or decreased the cost on this, but this report is really going to drive it home as far as what that impact was, right? How much more money did I spend on it because of this particular item? But it's also going to tell you when you saved. Right. So if we look at the particular example here, right, I have actually saved money with my roasted almonds here, right? $456. Like, that's significant savings, because I think this was for a month of data. So we actually saved money on that item, and we can see what that impact. I saved $450 by switching to that other item for this particular time frame. I'm not too mad about that. But if we look at the next couple of items down here that I had to gray out because it's their main item that they're ordering, but they're actually losing more money, right? How do we go from $635 to $228? Sounds to me like these guys got smart and did a contract pricing, but, you know, it hurt them. So, you know, again, know what it is that you're looking at, know what it is that you're arguing whenever you get up to the manager. But here are definitely a few reports that you can utilize to your advantage to get in and figure out which items work, which items don't work, what the impact is to my cost of goods, and where I need to make those potential changes. So lots of really great information. Before we wrap this up, right, we got one more slide after this. I do want to take a last poll to feel out what everyone is feeling as far as my wrap up is concerned. So as far as everything that you've learned today, which one of these would be a return on investment for you? Would it be, if you were to adopt this today, would you find this in faster ordering, more accurate as far as your quantities are concerned, because we're using that order suggestion, tighter substitution controls, because now we are identifying when substitutes hit and we're following up with the vendor on how we don't want that substitution ever again, or let's use this one if we do have to substitute? Is it cleaner for our invoices? Now that everything is a little bit more automated, now do we have cleaner invoices? I would hope that this is just a subsequent result from tightening everything up. And then lastly, right, do you have better reporting for everything? Now that we're concentrating on the ordering, we're concentrating on the reconciliation, it should tighten those up. So just a couple more moments on the poll. All right, so sharing those results. So it seems like most are getting more out of getting those accurate quantities. I definitely agree with that, especially if you're going to use your inventory and let the database do that math for you. Hey, I could see that really tightening up. Seeing a nice little second for clear invoice reconciliation and better reporting. And I think both of those kind of coincide, right? If we have clearer invoice reconciliation, then our reporting is going to be more accurate for, again, making these decisions. So thank you for participating. These are very helpful. So moving on, right? So to wrap everything up, to give myself a nice little bow to put everything on it, a couple of quick wins, right? So we taught you today how we can utilize your purchasing power to make purchasing better, right? We talked about how we can set it up in 365 to know which SKUs to use by using reporting like the receiving by purchased item to set up our order guides. Once the order guide is set up, taught you how to integrate the invoices and to integrate the purchased orders, and then how to connect the two together so we can start to get some of this reporting out of it. And then we talked about reports and things that you can do, conversations that you can have with your vendors to make the substitution process a little bit easier to swallow for you and your team. right? And then as far as putting a big bow on it, there's other automations that you can utilize in 365 to help out with this. For example, if let's say we don't integrate via EDI with these vendors, like they're a mom and pop and they're not willing to play ball with us, we have an AP capture program, and we also have an OCR that you can utilize to your advantage to make the invoice enter process, again, less painful, and let a machine do it and be more accurate so we don't have those hand put errors. We do have to train the OCRs just like any other AI out there. We've got to train it a little bit, but hey, I've used it out in the field. Very powerful and very effective once you finally do get those trainings in for it. As far as that sweet little bow that we're going to wrap and put on top of this ordering package, we also have the ability to pay those vendors. So not only are we ordering, not only are we invoicing, but you can also have the database physically send out a check, an ACH payment, or set up a vendor card to then pay those vendors, right? Which, I mean, that's just the perfect bow to wrap all of this up to, again, putting those automations in place. And then lastly, right, directing that link between your vendor and your team to make that more automated. I can't stress that enough, or otherwise we're going to look like, right, that restaurant manager at the beginning with his hair on fire and the transactions piling up all around you. We don't want that out of our restaurant managers. We want them talking to our guests. We want them coaching our employees to get better portioning, right, or to upsell those items that make us more profit inside of our servers, inside of the four walls, right? Those are the things we want our managers to concentrate on. This is how we can automate that process and make it easier on them, but also put you, area directors, CEOs, CPAs, and those types, accountants, to set up that automation for your team so you don't have to think about it. You know, hey, we're owning that process now. So with that being said, we've got some Q&A. Laura Lee, tell me what awesome questions, because I know there's got to be at least 4 or 5 really good ones in here. Let's hit them up.
Yeah, absolutely. So Eric is asking, can we still add just the primary vendor items to the order guide?
I believe that's an option. I'll be honest with you. I haven't looked at that drop down, but I do recall that if you are putting that primary under the vendor item record, that yes, you can pull that in one swoop. And if not, we need to bring that back. So I'm going to do a little research, but Eric, you should be able to do that. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. Again, it's been a little while since I've used that drop down, but yeah, you should be able to identify your primary and then pull those in bulk automatically to create your purchase order guides that much quicker. Great question.
Another question, what happens with EDI if you place a purchase order with a vendor and they have changed their SKU, darn it, and therefore the SKU that we submit on the purchase order is no longer valid? Is there any return communication from the vendor system to let us know?
So if it's an integrated vendor, the answer would be not through 365. That communication would happen in the online portal. Remember, all 365 is doing is taking your order and uploading it into the vendor's online portal, and that's where the substitution conversations are going to happen. That's when the substitutions, are going to occur, to where it's going to say item not available or whatever that looks like for the different vendors. I think different vendors have that set up differently, but it's all going to happen inside of the online orders. If we're not integrated with the purchased orders, then it's a simple email that's going out to your vendor rep. Then you could, hopefully your vendor rep is letting you know, hey, I'm not using that item and sending out another. And if not, that's your purchasing power moment to then say, hey man, if you substitute an item, let me know. But as far as the question to your answer, the PO to invoice reconciliation, as long as you are connecting what you order in the database to the invoice that's sent in, you're going to know what those substitutions are immediately. But the ways to mitigate it, again, online portal, or utilize your communication with your online rep.
And David, you mentioned usage per $1,000. Is that based on categories like food sales versus bar sales?
So it is not. It's going to be total revenue. Inside of the database, and I'm talking to my accountants here, so if you're an operator and this goes over your head, probably a reason why, but it utilizes GL types, which is your revenue, and then your revenue is going to go at the top of your P&L. So whatever your GL types are set to, it's going to go off the revenue one. So I don't think that you're going to have a GL type for your food, for your liquor, for your beer, for your wine. So no, it's not going to designate it to that extreme. You would need to do something outside of 365 to do that. It's just going to go off total revenue. Great question.
Brian wants to know, is there a limit to how many vendors auto import invoices?
No, there is not. As long as we play ball with them, and by play ball, I mean if they're on our integrated vendor list inside of our support article, you can have as many of those as you want to set up. Again, most contracts come with 2 or 3 of them that are included with the contract. So if you're a prospect, right, argue for more if you can. That's what I would do. Remember, you got the bargaining power. But anyway, if not, then get with your CSM and see about what you can do to add on more to that. But no, there is not a limit to how many EDIs you can set up on the vendor side.
Philip is asking, do catch weight items work on the purchase orders?
It does. And there's actually a support article that goes over specifically how to handle catch weight. But basically what's going to happen is whenever you're choosing your units of measure, you need to make sure that pound is the unit of measure that you're selecting. So whenever you say we want 20 pounds worth, then it's going to say 20 pounds and not 20 10-pound cases, right? So got to make sure that you distinguish that on the order guides, but that's going to be a conversation that you'll need to have with your vendor to make sure that, hey, any catch weight items, how do you want to see it? Do you want to see it by the case or do you want to see it by the catch weight? Great answer. And again, we have a support article that does go over that process.
We have a question about commissary. So our storeroom is set up as a commissary location. Due to this, we do not have all the data that has been shown. What would be the possibilities for a workaround?
Let's see. So if your commissary is a different location, you should be ordering from your broadline distributors through the commissary and then taking inventory at your commissary. Again, that's a personal choice on how I would run it if I was the director of operations for your company. Commissary, I'm going to treat just like a restaurant. You're ordering and you're doing invoicing and you're doing inventory just like the restaurants are. So that way we can determine what that usage is and then we can utilize these steps. If not, then I'm afraid it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Than what you're going to have to go off of would be how much are you sending out to the restaurants? How much are the restaurants ordering? And then you'll have to base your usage and your orders off of those amounts. I don't recommend that. Again, I like to use what was actually used. That's where your inventories and your invoicing comes to play because it's a lot more accurate versus, hey, let's just run our cost of goods off of what we sold versus what we used, right? Big difference between the two, and inventory is what configures that. Otherwise, you're just going to have to run your cost of goods on purchases alone. And it's not a bad way to do it, but again, we can definitely get a lot tighter. And the answer is take inventory.
So with the increase of prices across the industry, what's the easiest way to compare a vendor's price from last year to this year?
Yeah, I would say that the item price change analysis report is going to be the perfect report for that. So I'm going to go back real quick to that report so we can see what it looks like. But here inside of it, right, it's going to tell you this is the price that you were paying as of, because it's a date range report. So I'm going to say my first date range is whenever I know that we were paying this amount, and then my date range is going to be when I know that they increased it. And so I would run this report, see what that impact is, to again be able to make the proper decisions on how I want to utilize it from here. But this is the report that I would run to find that out. Great question.
Are we able to use smart ordering to order from the commissary?
So that's a great question. So the commissary would need to be set up as a vendor in your 365 database. So I don't think so, because the commissary uses different ordering platforms than the purchase order guide. But I think that is a great idea. I think if anything, you could use your previous order quantities to utilize that, right? Because on the commissary orders, it does say previous order, so you can see what that trend was, or previous order of your last 4, I believe is a setting that's in the commissary. I would use that, but no, we don't have the suggestive ordering for commissary, although I think it's a great idea. So I would recommend that you go to our idea portal and put that in, because if we don't have something like that, we should. So yeah, definitely recommend to throw that out there.
All right, I think we have time for one more. To have strong theoretical usage, how often do you recommend operations perform inventory counts?
at a minimum once a period. And that's just me, right? I always like to line my inventories up with the end of the fiscal period, so that way it lines up with my accounting calendar, my fiscal calendar, right? Because we have two different calendars. We got operational calendar that determines, right, we start our weeks on Mondays and it goes through Sundays. Our fiscal calendar is what decides whenever we run our P&L reports or balance sheets or anything like that. So because I want those two to line up, I'm going to make sure that it coincides with that fiscal calendar. Now, me personally, as an operator, I'm a real big into weekly counts because I see the periodical counts as like an eagle eye, what happened. But if I need to make actionable data or actionable changes, that weekly really comes in handy. The decision that you need to make as an organization is whether or not we want those weeklies to be general ledger posting or not, right? Do we want these inventories to hit the P&L, or do we just want to utilize them to run reports? But that's how you can, again, utilize your inventories to help you retrieve those numbers. Great question.
Fantastic. And David, is there a way for those who have the solution already and they're looking for a little extra help, how do they reach out to their customer success manager?
Yeah, so if you don't know who your customer success manager is and you don't have their email on speed dial, I would recommend putting in a support ticket, asking to be introduced to your customer success manager, or if we have a team of them, one of our teams is a whole team of CSMs that supports a whole big, huge chunk of our customers. So put in a support ticket, ask to get in touch with your CSM, and then they can get in touch with you and then talk about whatever it is that you need to talk about, increasing usage or increasing the amount of vendors that we want to integrate, whatever that process is, but that's how you can get in touch with your CSM.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's time to wrap things up, guys. So next steps, we do have one final poll, and this is mostly for people who are interested in learning more about EDI, maybe OCR, AP payments, some of those really cool features that help empower our purchasing even more. So let us know if you would like a Restaurant365 team member to reach out and share more about how our purchasing features can benefit your business. I'll give you guys a few more seconds on that.
But right down the middle, almost, Laura Lee, which tells me that the webinar, hopefully people are like, David, I know exactly what to do now, and they're going to go in and they're going to start utilizing it. So this is good. I'm hoping that's why. Good stuff.
Absolutely. And to wrap things up, just you would advance the slide. We want to make sure that you are well aware. Coming up next week, we are going to be in San Diego for the Restaurant Transformation Festival. This is our 2-day event. It is curated and just created for our customers, with our customers in mind. David will be there. I will be there. We hope that you will be there too. You can go ahead and scan that QR code. If you do not have your ticket yet, use Coach20 to get 20% off. And thank you so much for being here today. If you cannot make it in San Diego, we will be in New York in December. We were there last year in December, and I really thought it was going to be terrifyingly cold, and it was lovely. We got to see the tree lighting. It was so nice. And so we are headed back there again. So if you cannot make San Diego, I highly recommend you scan that QR code and meet us in New York.
Yep.
And thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you, David, for sharing your insights. Anything you want to close with?
No, I'm excited about RTF. I'm personally doing a presentation over reporting in our canned reports. So if you want to learn more about reporting, because I can talk about that stuff for days as far as 365 is concerned, yeah, the RTFs are definitely the way to go. So really looking forward to meeting and greeting. And thanks for coming to the purchasing. Hopefully, again, you guys got some good usage out of it, whether you're CEO, CFO, CPA, restaurant manager trying to get a leg up on the game. Hopefully you got some really good content out of this. So hope the best for you guys.
And always feel free to give us some feedback and let us know what you want to learn more about at grow@restaurant365.com. Have a great day.